Hello, hello. This is a short message addendum for my almost Mainers here, those of you who have decided to do this project on Almost Main. I just wanted to talk to you briefly because, as I mentioned in the previous video, Almost Main is not necessarily a traditional story structure, right? It has a bunch of different little stories that all take place around the same time in the same place. We would call those vignettes. These small interconnected stories that happen over the course of the show. So I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the controlling idea with regards to that, because as you may have noticed, as I was giving that little video introduction to that, the controlling idea is supposed to sort of center around the climax of the story. Now, that said, how do you do that if there's not an exact climax? Well, firstly, though there's not a traditional climax with Almost Main, probably the emotional sort of peak of the story, as we've gone through all these different sort of love stories along the way, is the, I don't remember which scene it is. I think it must be scene 8, maybe 9, or the 8th scene, I should say. Seeing the Thing, though. It's called Seeing the Thing. It's the one with Rhonda and Dave towards the very end there. That's probably sort of considered the emotional climax of the show. That said, there's all sorts of different storylines and takeaways. So what you probably need to do as far as creating a controlling idea is, and what I would do if I was directing the show, is that I would take the overall show and I would look at the thematic elements in it. Obviously, the major motif in there is love, right? So I would create a controlling idea around the idea of love, with the same sort of formula, value plus cause. But I would select the sort of heart, pun intended, of the story, to tell the story of love the way that I want to express it. So what do I want to say about love through this story? What does this story say about love in general, overall, rather than focusing in on that very specific moment? Unless you want to view it like, oh, some of these stories are arguing for one thing, but the climax is here in Rhonda and Dave, and maybe that's the real true story that I want to tell, is that we see some negative things, some positive things, and they go back and forth, and finally in the end we see that it's positive, not just with Rhonda and Dave, but also with, you'll have to forgive my memory on this, but also the final scene of that, I guess is it called the epilogue? You have the prologue, the intermission kind of prologue, and then the epilogue with those same two characters on the park bench and the snowball. So it sort of ends, it's an upending for sure. We get Rhonda and Dave, and we get, it's right next to, the heartbreak of, what's her name when she comes back? You have to forgive my memory on this, but she comes back to the door, to see the man that she loved, and he's already married, right? So it has this sort of play here. So what I would do is I would take a look at the whole picture, the big picture of love, and how I want to tell that story. And I would use that overarching idea rather than necessarily finding a very specific climactal point, although you could kind of do that with Rhonda and Dave. That would be totally acceptable. And I would put, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I would put my controlling idea to work on the overall idea of love for the whole show rather than necessarily for a single protagonist. That is what I would do if I was directing the show, because this is one of those very, very unique shows where there is more than one protagonist, because we have these vignettes, right? And they never meet each other, right? None of these stories overlap in the moment. They kind of all know each other because they're from the same small town, but none of these stories like overlap in the moment. We don't get characters coming in and out of different scenes. So this is one of those very rare shows where you have multiple protagonists, so you can't really point to the one protagonist. So I just wanted to give you guys that information. I hope that helps. I would look at it as a whole rather than looking for the protagonist in the climax. And I would say, what story, what's the theme, what's the main idea that I want to tell, that I want to communicate about probably love, right? I also want to give you a little bit of a heads up, because when I did direct this show a few years ago at the high school level, Sometimes some of the information sort of went over the actors' heads because they didn't understand the idioms or the sayings that these scenes were sort of hinting at. There's a lot of wordplay in these scenes as we move forward. I just want you to know that. Basically, every scene has sort of an idiom or a saying that it alludes to, right? So the scene at the beginning, I think it's scene 1, is right after the prologue, I think, where she has her heart in the bag, right? That's alluding to the idiom or the phrase, right? A broken heart, and he starts to put it back together. Yeah. Or the two that are ice skating and they end up breaking up, right? And the shoe falls from the sky. Well, that seems kind of weird, right? Except that it's referring to the phrase, the other shoe just dropped. Okay, you can look up what that means if you'd like to, and I would highly recommend it, so that you can understand the intention. So each of these scenes, almost all of them, has an idiom associated with it. The one where she comes back and he's shrunk, right? He's become a small man. That's the phrase. You sort of become a small man. And he's lost hope, right? And he's become a small man, a shell of his former self. So there's all this imagery, these idioms that exist and sayings that exist to highlight in sort of a tongue-in-cheek, witty kind of way. So it's pretty fun. So I'd take a look at that too as we move forward, see kind of what you can dig out there. Anyway, I wanted to share that. Look at the whole story rather than a single particular scene or climax or protagonist. That's okay. And then if you do want to hone in on one thing and look at the Rhonda Dave scene as sort of your climax, you can do that too. Either way will be acceptable. But I wanted to give you that information. So thank you for taking a moment to look at this. I hope that's helpful. These, like I mentioned in the band for everyone, these are now due at the end of class, not at the beginning of class, and we'll do controlling idea next week. Or sorry, not controlling idea, counter idea next week. All right. Thank you guys.